Well, it's Wednesday of Holy Week. Under normal conditions, Wednesday is often known as Hump Day. Not quite the start of the week, but not quite the weekend yet either. In our present conditions, every single day feels like a Wednesday. It reminds me of childhood vacation trips in the car, when from the back seat, without electronic devices to distract and entertain and help pass the time, my brother or sister and I would take turns calling out to our parents, "Are we there yet?" And the answer from the front seat would always come back, "No, not yet. There are a few more hours to go, a few more 100 miles still ahead." This would always be met with groans of despair or boredom. No matter our age today, we are all wondering, are we there yet? When can we get out of our houses? When can we get back to normal routines? The reading assigned for this Wednesday of Holy Week comes to us from Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 through 3. "Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and the sin that clings so closely, and let us run with perseverance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith, who for the sake of the joy that was set before him endured the cross, disregarding its shame, and has taken his seat at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such hostility against himself from sinners, so that you may also not grow weary or lose heart." The letter to the Hebrews is one of the more neglected sections of the New Testament. It contains some of the most erudite language in all of the New Testament, for one thing, but it's also that it presents such a long, sustained, complex argument about the priesthood of Christ and the pilgrimage of faith for disciples. Written to Jewish Christians in the first century who had faced and would face again suffering and persecution, the letter to the Hebrews addresses a people who have grown weary, who've fallen away from the faith and from worship because they are tired. And so this letter is written to encourage them to continue his pilgrimage and to reach the promised land. Hebrews speaks of faith more than any other book in the whole New Testament, and chapter 11 that precedes our reading for today mentions the word faith 24 times alone. And by faith, Hebrews means active obedience, the faithfulness that we have that helps us to endure persecution and hard times, and helps us to reach out and to walk out into life vigorously and with courage. The writer of the Hebrews in chapter 11 lists a lot of ancestors and saints who have gone before us, who lived such faithfulness before us, and then the letter encourages us to, in our own time, live with such faithfulness as well, almost symbolically handing the baton from them to us. And the witness that we give now in our own time of hardship will be our witness to our children and grandchildren. I'm remembering today, back in 1993, the great snowstorm that hit Alabama and Georgia, dropping between 1 foot and 2.5 feet of snow, bringing down power lines and bringing down phone lines in so many places. My mother must have been about my age then, and my grandmother was in her 80s. They lived 2 miles apart. But after 2 days with no phone communication possible, my mother decided she needed to go check on my grandmother. So she and a friend set out, and it took a long time because Alabama gardening boots are not exactly Vermont snowshoe boots. After an hour and a half of walking through thick snow, my mother reached my grandmother's house and found her doing just fine. She was pulled up close to her gas log fire, huddled in a blanket, holding her saucepan over the log fire, heating up a can of soup. She was surprised to see my mother. Probably being raised in the Great Depression and living through World War II gave her fortitude, but I suspect more deeply it was her faith her faith in Christ, lived out among her ordinary friends in her Methodist church, that sustained her and gave her the trust that Jesus was with her. In fact, Jesus was way out ahead of her. So I'm wondering today who the saints, who the ancestors of faith in your life might have been, those who modeled for you faithfulness and trust, whose active obedience saw them through hard times. Today, I invite you to speak their name aloud in thanksgiving to God as a prayer. Or perhaps you might tell such a family story to a friend, a spouse, children, or grandchildren. And in that way, these ancestors' faith story lives on today. Francis Taylor Gench, a New Testament scholar who's written a commentary on Hebrews, reminds us that the saints are cheering us on, their own lives still bearing witness to the power and endurance of faith. We run looking to Jesus, she said, who endured the cross and who waits for us at the finish line. Are we there yet? How much longer, we ask from the back seat. And those who are ahead of us look back and say, no, not yet. There's still some miles, there's still some hours to go. We can feel despair. We might even groan in collective dismay and boredom. But the writer of the letter of the Hebrews encourages us to reach out, to take the baton and persevere in faithfulness, looking to Jesus, who is the pioneer and perfecter of our faith, who for the sake of the joy set before him endured the cross, so that you and I may not grow weary and may not lose heart. Hang on through Thursday and Friday and the long Saturday ahead, because Jesus is already waiting for us at Sunday's finish line.